Welcome everyone to the Sacred Hockey Mask. I am Peter, and joining me as always is
Lady Shasha, the Mistress of Snark, coming to you from sunny Orlando, Florida.
actually sunny today.
Yes, it actually is.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Although we had a lot of rain over the weekend because we caught the outer bands of Hurricane Ida.
Ah, I think I'm ready for autumn to kick in and
Hmm.
take summer away. I'm sick of the sun now. But this is a horror movie podcast. We get together, we've watched the movie, and we talk about it. We're still working through some old vote winners from Patreon from before this show even existed. But today,
Hmm.
we're going to be looking at a film from. I mean, it's listed as 2019, so I guess it came out in a festival or two back in 2019, but it didn't come out to the public really until 2020. And that is Saint Maud, which is a film that had an interesting trailer. It got some good buzz when it came out, so I was looking forward to checking this out. Um, and neither of us had seen this before
Yeah, until last night.
until for this, yeah. So I was very curious to see what this was going to be. I didn't really know exactly what it was about beyond just obviously there was going to be some religious imagery or
Hmm.
themes, and that it was about a carer who was looking after a dying woman. Right, that was all I knew, and I went into this. So obviously we're going to start spoiler free. Which is probably going to be a relatively short section because I feel like there's going to be a
Hmm.
lot in this that is definitely needing the spoiler section to really dig into it. But uh, we'll get into the general impressions, some technical stuff, and like the broad strokes of like the good and bad qualities of the movie. Um, but this is written and directed by Rose Glass, and it is her feature length debut. She's done some short films before. I looked her up, but this is her first feature length movie. So and it is, I believe it is classed as a British movie.
Hmm.
Obviously there's an American character in it, but it is set in the UK. The lead actor and it's Welsh. So,
Hmm.
and Film 4 is one of the studios behind it, which usually indicates British. So, um, yeah, so that's an A24 distributed at least in the US, if not most places. So, uh, and when you see A24 and you see the word horror,
Hmm.
there's
I
potential there. There's
yeah,
potential.
I find myself liking A24 movies more often than not.
Except screw Slice. That was such a slam dunk of a goddamn movie concept, and it was terrible. There's
Did you
a
say the movie Slice?
Slice, yeah, the
Yes,
pizza,
yeah. That was so disappointing. The trailer
yeah.
looked so
The,
good.
the trailer was good, and then
Hmm.
it was like a series of sketch characters who had no plot or
Hmm.
character or interesting stuff to do. I don't know. It was me and Tim tore that one apart. We were so excited
Hmm.
about that movie as well. But Saint Maud is obviously not that. That was more of a horror comedy. This is a more serious, slow burn
Hmm.
character study horror film, psychological, where it feels like a horror movie. You're expecting it to get horrific, but it doesn't get there too quick. It's a
Hmm.
slow build of just like, okay, where are we going with this? It feels like we're uncomfortable. It feels like we're building to something nasty. It's this is, and it's going to feel earned when we get there because of the way it's building. But it's not a movie where there's going to be like 10 murders in the first 30 minutes.
Oh
It's
yeah.
that's not what this is.
I would compare it to The House of the Devil, the way that one
Hmm.
had a slow burn to a climactic ending.
So that's a very good movie.
Hmm.
I very very much like that one. So I guess without further ado, I shall ask the sacred question on the sacred podcast to my sacred co-host, Shasha. What did you make of Saint Maud?
I actually had this on my watch list for a while, and I was disappointed that I couldn't see it until just now because in America it was on the festival circuit for almost
Hmm.
a year, so it wasn't available streaming anywhere. And finally, it pops up on Hulu, so I was very happy to see that because I like quiet, atmospheric horror. Sometimes I know people know me as the gore connoisseur, but I also like quiet, atmospheric, slow burn horror movies.
Yeah.
It's
So
with an independent feel. This had a very independent. I don't know whether it was an independent movie, but it felt like an independent movie.
I don't think it technically is, but
Hmm.
it British films tend to look independent compared to Hollywood movies just because
Hmm.
they're usually smaller in scale. So I get what you mean. But what did you think? Did you like the movie?
I did. I was, especially since I did not expect the ending that I got. Actually, I don't know what I expected because when I think about it, the trailer was a little bit vague, which I like. I do
Yeah.
not like when horror trailers spoil the movie or give away too many plot points or show you all the best scenes. So this kudos to them for making a good trailer that didn't spoil the movie.
Honestly, for most horror movies, especially movies like this, I all I
Mhm.
want from a trailer is a sense of tone and style. Because the tone and style
Mhm.
will sell me on the movie. I don't want to know anything about it other than that. Uh, I also like this quite a bit. In fact, I was really into it from the get go.
Mhm.
It, I said this about the last movie we did, but this did also look, it was shot in film. It did not have that clean
Mhm.
digital look. I thought the lighting and cinematography felt very like focused, very stylized, and not in like a flashy way, not like it was doing like a bunch of weird like stuff that was stuck out, but it was very intimate, it was very close up. It felt like a really well thought out, confident piece of direction. And the way
Mhm.
that, sometimes when things get too flashy, it can feel like the director is feeling a lack of confidence, so they're just throwing techniques they know to try and
Mhm.
make it feel. This felt like it knew when to just be a static shot. It knew when to just be a simple close up. You sort of felt this girl, the main character, uh, Maud, like her claustrophobia, her
Mhm.
introverted nature, her uncomfort, everything around her. Because that's ultimately what this movie is. It's a movie from her perspective and
Mhm.
everything she's going through, how she feels. And she has a very narrow, specific view in the world, and you sort of learn what that is as the movie goes on. And there's like teases at the start of, okay, something happened in her past. We'll get to that. But like, I thought it was a really strong character horror film that I was thinking about it for a bit after I watched it, and I think the ending is actually quite good. I like the ending, and I'm looking forward to talking about that when we get deep into the spoilers. But um, I would say I like this quite a bit.
I would compare this director to someone like Lars von Trier. I don't know if you're familiar with his
Oh
work,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, it was giving me kind of tones of that.
I'd say yeah. I think that name might scare some people away who shouldn't be scared, because I don't think it's as
Oh, not as the storyline is not as extreme as what Lars
yeah,
would give
it's
some
not as
of the
off-putting, and I would even
yeah.
say it's as slow as like, but I can definitely see the comparison in
Mhm.
the really uh consistent methodical pacing and the
Mhm.
kind of just slightly artistic visual style, but not
Mhm.
overly flat. Like yeah, I can definitely see the comparisons. The kind of the that foreboding presence and tone that feels like it's
Mhm.
building to something bad like throughout. I can definitely see the comparison. Uh, so yeah, I like this a lot. Like I was kind of I was feeling it early on, and I was like, okay, I hope this keeps this up and it kind of sticks the landing where it's going,
Mhm.
and it kind of shook things up in a way that I wasn't expecting. It kind of
Oh yeah.
I was expecting it to be one thing the whole movie, and it about halfway through it actually does something to change the not the premise, but change the setting and change what we're
Mhm.
doing for a while. And I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting this refreshing change of pace, if you will, in the middle, and it really did do a lot to help the movie kind of stay fresh, stay interested, because I felt we were always exploring new aspects of Maud's character and who she is and why she is the way she is and what we're doing with her. So there's a lot to talk about her when we get to spoilers. I can't
Mhm.
really say anything else to be honest at this point, but um, I mean, what did you think of the performances, the cast? I mean, there's two real actors to talk about, really.
Well, the two characters, Maud and Amanda, is what basically hold the movie together. If those two actresses were not strong, this movie would have fallen apart. So I think they
Mm-hmm.
did an amazing job.
Absolutely, and it's not because the rest of it's not tip top, because it is. It's actually a really
Mhm.
well directed movie and really well written. But it is a character drama, slow build horror
Mhm.
movie. It needs to have at least the lead character, the actor needs to be hitting those notes and has to. And this is such a a sleek what's the word I'm looking for, kind of mousy person. She's a very
Mhm.
small. She's very quiet,
She's
uh,
awkward.
awkward. Yeah, all
Mhm.
these things, and she plays that to a key. And Amanda, the sick woman who's she's there to care for as a sort of live-in nurse.
Mhm.
Amanda is loudmouthed. She's swearing constantly. She's always smoking and drinking. She is the
Mhm.
complete and utter opposite in every way, and just happens to be dying, which
Mhm.
is kind of this this difference between them, which really kind of sings. Um, and I think the previous nurse at the start made me laugh because I think she was I want to say she was Irish,
Mhm.
but when she comes in, and we haven't quite gotten a sense of who Maud is yet, right? We don't know exactly what her temperament is, or like we know she's religious at this point. We've had like one quick scene to explain that, but other than that, there's not really like we get to know her through her actions, through how she interacts with people. So because
Mhm.
it's right at the start, we don't really know much about her yet. And the first reaction that kind of gives you something is that when the previous live-in nurse is just rushing out as quick as she can, she's like, "Okay, this is what you have to give her before dinner, and she's up there, and this is where you can sleep up there." Blah blah blah. I'm off. Bye bye. But just before she goes, Maud says, "Oh hey, how is she?" Right? And she sort of says it in a really meek and kind of serious way, where she's asking like, "How is she?" And the previous nurse goes, "Oh, she's a bit of a c word,
Mhm.
but have fun," and just walks out. And I think the kind of the awkward sort of shock on Maud's face like just tells you a lot about her, and like she clearly is not comfortable with this. Like, I mean, not so much the language, although I'm sure she doesn't like it, but more just like how flippant this previous character is about. She's a bit of a cow, and
Mhm.
cow's not the word she used, obviously. But I'm just,
Yeah. I
I'm
see. I see you next Tuesday is what I'm.
Hey, I see you next
Yeah.
Tuesday. Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Um, but the way it comes out so casually, and she just is like standing there in shock. And for the record, for folk who are, and really, I was gonna say from other countries, just Americans. For Americans, like the c word's a bit more casual, right?
Mhm.
Typically in the UK, it's even more casual in Australia, from what I understand. But
Yeah.
it's not unusual, for that to be thrown around and not be a big deal. Um,
Mhm.
but but that's kind of your first beat with that character to kind of like give you a sense of like how she's going to perceive things, and as the movie goes on, you get more in depth and so on and so on. But the movie is uh you know, extreme, and I think this lead actress, I should get her name actually, hon. Uh, Morfydd Clark. It's a very
Mhm.
weird name. I'm not surprised she's turned out to be Welsh because that's a
Mhm.
very weird, probably Welsh name. Um, but she has to do a variety of things, and I feel like this is the sort of performance that could be written off by many when they see it. If they just watch 5 minutes of it, they go, she's just sitting looking moody. Like that's all it is. Like there's nothing to this. But she
Mhm.
has to do so many like subtle things, and the way she reacts to everything around, especially in the back half of the movie when things start to get a bit more extreme and it's a bit more of a this bubbling sort of thing. Because if I was trying to sell this movie to someone without spoiling much, I think I would kind of describe it as how someone in their own head can kind of manipulate themselves with a delusion
Mhm.
that leads to something bad. That would be like as far as I would go, and that's how I'd maybe try and sell it. And that's very much like, and that's what makes it a character movie because it's all about how she interprets things, how she reacts to things, and how she's kind of clinging to something that's ultimately proving toxic because of how she's interpreting it and because of how she's using it. And it's really well done stuff. And I think the performance has a lot of subtleties. There's some stuff that I learned after I watched that I thought was kind of neat about something else that she does in this movie that I didn't realize. Um, and she plays off the opposite of Amanda really well, who's
Mhm.
again very much more of a character, much more of a, and she's not like she's a bit of a loudmouth like artistic character who's very bitter and sarcastic and whatever.
Abrasive
Yeah,
sometimes.
maybe she was always like this, but she's probably worse because she's dying because
Mhm.
she's. I mean, and fair enough. If you're dying, you're probably going to maybe some of your worst tendencies might come
Mhm.
out a little bit. Like I'm not going to critique that as a human flaw, but um, yeah. So performances are good. Uh, cinematography is great. Lighting's great. Music is unobtrusive. It's just very pulled back and subtle. There's definitely some moments where the bass goes into like sort of like a pulsing overdrive at one point
Hmm.
where I was really feeling that rumble towards the end. Um, but no, I would say, I would go as far as this is a great movie, and I think when we get into spoilers, like I think sort of talking about that and talking about what it's actually doing is where we're going to really get to the fruit of that. But uh,
Now that you mention
so
it, I didn't even notice the soundtrack, which to me signals to me that it works so well that it just became a part of the story.
yeah, yeah. There was definitely a lot of silence as well. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely a
Hmm.
movie that knew when to use silence, but there was music and it did blend in so well,
Hmm.
and it was um because it can go two ways. You can have music where it's unmemorable because it just wasn't that good, and
Hmm.
but you remember that you remember it happening, but you don't remember. You can not even necessarily sing it, but just you couldn't even think it in your head because it was just
Hmm.
so forgettable. This is not that sort of case. I mean, not that I could sing this, but that's because of the type of music that it was. It was, it was slow, it was brooding, it was foreboding, it was all these things. It wasn't, it didn't have a melody. It wasn't
Hmm.
like la da 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 da. Saint Mott's is a movie, but a woman who might be
I
crazy.
I did learn something about the UK that I didn't know.
Oh, go
I
on.
didn't know that you guys also had a Coney Island there.
I don't know if that's what the place is called. I know why I said that because I know it's because for a second I legitimately thought, wait, is this set in New York? Like,
Yeah, because I saw the sign that said Coney Island. And I was like, that's.
but it doesn't look. This is the thing. It looks entirely British the entire time. So
Hmm.
it threw me for a loop for it. I was like, wait. And I was like, no, it's just a. So I don't know if the place is called that or if it's just like
Maybe the restaurant was called that or something.
yeah,
Maybe it's a restaurant on.
yeah. It may have been like an amusement arcade. It might be like
Hmm.
slot machines and grab machines and things like that. One of the things that's different from the US, of course, in the UK is that gambling's okay everywhere in the country. So,
Hmm.
you have like small gambling things mixed in with the arcade stuff at these types of places. Um, so that's what based on all the lights, that's what it looked like to me. But
Hmm.
um, I wonder if it's just like a because it is a beachfront location. It's a beach town that
Hmm.
they're at. I wonder if it's in the same way that like if you buy like barbecue food here, right? Like the brand
Yeah.
might say Tex-Mex on it, and it's not. It's, like I wonder if it's more of like a branding thing, just because Coney Island's such a famous like beachfront seaside
Hmm.
location. I wonder if it's just something like that where I don't know appropriation. So cultural appropriation. That's all I can say. Maybe it is called. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe I should look this up. Maybe I should have Googled
Yeah,
UK Coney
maybe
Island.
Coney Island tried to do like Disney, like you know how you have
Hmm.
Disneyland in California, Disney World in Florida, Disneyland Paris, Disneyland. I think there's one in Japan. I'm not sure what city in Japan, but
Yeah, but Coney Island's not like a thing that's owned by a company, though, right? It's just a place that has a lot of different things on it.
yeah, I don't know. I believe it or not, I've never been there, even though I lived I lived a good probably like 40 minutes from Coney Island. I've never been there.
Yeah. Um, is Coney Island where they? I feel because I watched Cloverfield not long ago. Is that where their like Happy Day of Memories was? I want to say it was.
Oh, I don't remember.
I
It's
think I
been
think it was.
I have not rewatched Cloverfield since it came out because I
Hmm.
didn't like how shaky the camera was. I also didn't
Oh,
like
that's
the
fair.
girl that they were trying to save. I was like, "Why are you trying to save her? She's a jerk."
They were trying to save her because she was one of the kids in Kindergarten Cop, and that makes her worth saving.
Oh, okay. I
Oh,
do like Kindergarten Cop.
Kindergarten's great. Who's your daddy and what does he do? Uh, it's a wonderful film.
Mhm.
All right, I think we get spoilers then for Saint Maud. There's a lot of juicy stuff to dig into with this one.
Yes.
So that is dive in. The movie opens with a very unexplained, just abstract scene where Maud is in like a morgue, or
Mhm.
maybe even just a hospital room. But I think it had like drawers that look like a morgue to me. And she's like sitting in the corner, like this. She's like traumatized by something. Like she's scared, she's terrified. The lights flickering. It looks like a horror movie, and there's a dead body kind of like half hanging off of a stretcher, right? There's like it's the hair. I actually got a little confused by this. I actually went back and watched this again because something about the lighting made the hair look weird to me, where it looked like the hair was like more skin or something. Like it kind of
Mm-hmm.
it didn't look like hair. I think it's just the lighting. It just looks weird. But I was like, is this meant to look kind of demonic or like it didn't. It wasn't supposed to. It just
Mm.
it's just the visual. But there's no explanation of this. What's going on? It just and I wasn't sure because I thought, oh, is this what it's building up to? Is this where we're going to end the movie later, or is this something from our past? And it turns out the movie teases out later on that this is from our past, that this
Mm-hmm.
is something. But it takes a long time. Like we're like 40 minutes out of the movie before she runs into a character who references, oh, what you did, and it's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, all right, okay, this is from our past, right? But we have her narrating occasionally, and it tends to be just kind of her views on religion or views on like what she's going through, and she like thanks God for giving her strength to have a second chance. She believes she's destined for more. You saved me, God, so I should, surely it's
Mm-hmm.
for more than this. And she has a new posting at Amanda's place. And when I said the movie changes halfway through, I meant that I genuinely thought that when she was at this house with Amanda, that she was going to be there the entire movie.
Yeah,
Uh,
I did too.
yeah, but it actually shakes things up about halfway through, where she ends up getting fired basically because she punches her or slaps
Mm-hmm.
her. Um, and we'll get to that in a second. But uh, yeah, this first part of the movie, it's establishing these two characters and who they are. It's establishing Maud as this timid character who is deeply religious. We find out that she is relatively recent as far as a conversion goes. She's not been religious her whole life. Presumably, this is something she was drawn to after this incident that's teased in the opening, and we get this relationship that kind of forms between them, where Amanda clearly doesn't really believe in religion, doesn't believe
Mm-hmm.
in God, but is nice enough to kind of like entertain the idea for her Maud's sake and kind of prays with her when she's eating, kind of bonds with her a little bit, gives her a book as a present at one point, and she makes like one reference to, oh, Maud's trying to save my soul. I guess you're my savior because you're trying to like, tell
Mm-hmm.
God to accept me and let me in and blah blah blah. And Maud takes this very seriously, where her narration then comes back in and says, you know, this is why you saved me, so I could save other people. I'm going to save her soul. What's more important than that? So this just becomes our goal, and um, we see some things where the people around Amanda are starting to let her down. Like this guy she knows, who's clearly like a casual ex boyfriend or whatever he is, like leaves kind of in a huff because she gets sick when they're trying to have kind of a romantic night or whatever. Which
Mm-hmm.
and even this does a lot for Maud's character because she like basically claims she's going to meet friends to give them the house to themselves, but she actually doesn't have friends to go see. She just goes and sits on her own at a restaurant and then just kind of kills time, interacts with a homeless person, and
Mm-hmm.
generally does that kind of thing. Um, but she's there for Amanda when she gets home. She's called back. She gets there. She cleans up the vomit. She helps her into bed. She's there. She's kind of her rock. She's stable. All these things, and Amanda kind of leans into her a little bit more and kind of entertains the religion a little bit more. And it's through this first part of the film where we start to get more serious, like hints that something's not quite right. Where the director herself referenced what we see a few times in this film as a what's she called? Was it a godgasm?
Yeah.
That's what she called it, a godgasm. Where she's praying, and when Amanda asks her at one point, like, when you pray, do you get a response? Does it? And she's like, sometimes he speaks to me, but most times it's more of a feeling. Like I feel his presence, and we see examples of her like basically just like rolling around the floor, like and whipping her hair around, being like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, oh God, literally, oh God, like.
Yeah. Usually I don't like CGI, but there was a little bit of CGI used
uh,
in some of these
yeah,
scenes
it's
to
very
great
small.
effect. It
It's
was such a small little thing where
yeah,
her mouth would open, but it would open just a little too wide
a
for
little,
a human mouth to open, and it
and
was just just unsettling enough.
Yeah, and it made her face look just a little bit long, and I think that's the key.
Hmm.
It's just a little bit. They didn't go over the top. There wasn't a lot of it. It was just a
Yeah.
little bit to make her feel just a little unreal,
Yeah,
just a
and there was
little
one time
off.
where her eyes, the spacing of her eyes were just slightly too far apart
Yeah,
too. There was just these little tweaks that is like, okay, that's unsettling.
and there's two things go through my mind during this like first section of the movie. I'm kind of thinking, okay, option one, none of this is real, and she's just
Hmm.
absolutely batshit insane. And all we're seeing this through her perspective, so we're seeing what she's seeing and feeling and
Hmm.
hearing, but none of this is real, and she's just crazy. That's option one. Option two is that this is real, but this isn't God. This is something else. This is
Hmm.
something convincing her of something. Now, by the end of the movie, I do have I have a firm opinion. Like I do veer one way or the other. And I did read some interesting things about what other people think about the end of
Hmm.
the movie. What's interesting is that the is what I read from it is what the director intended, because the director's been quite open and said, "No, this is what I intended. I do think this alternate take's interesting, but that's not really what I was, you know, thinking or saying
Hmm.
when I was doing the movie." But we'll get into that in the ending, though. Let's not jump ahead. But that was kind of this portion of the movie, and there's even a scene where Amanda kind of like mimics her when they're praying together and rolls around as well. Obviously, she's not actually feeling anything, but she's
Hmm.
doing this with her, and all of a sudden, Maud has this purpose, this sense of purpose, where she's just important. She feels like she's saving someone's soul. She's not just like a failure who failed to do something, who made a mistake. I think it's when she's out for this like period when she's out for the night that she runs into someone she knows, and she doesn't want to speak to her clearly, but this woman comes up to her. Her name's Joy, and says, "Oh, hey, Katie. It's been a while." And you're like, "Katie?
Hmm.
There's Maud. We talked about it.
Yeah.
We did." And it's like, okay, she's lying about her name. But this is Maud's not her real name, which is very interesting given the whole idea of the saint. And she's
Hmm.
asked earlier on by Amanda, like, who's your saint? She says Magdalene, and it's like, oh, that's weird. I didn't realize that was one that people picked. And this idea that she ultimately sees herself as a savior and then has these delusions of becoming a saint herself. That's kind of what the movie's going to get to. But uh, there's a reference here where Katie says, "Oh, you're in private care. Do they know what you did?" Like, as if
Hmm.
like they may not like your history, and that might it's like, oh, okay, all right, okay. What did she do? And it's actually not even like when you actually realize what it is later when it's properly teased. It's not even that bad. Uh, like because there's a moment later on where I thought she did something with a corpse. Like I thought she did something nasty with a corpse at one point,
Hmm.
because of how it showed something, and it isn't though. It's actually more. It's more of an innocent mistake she made that just kind of traumatized her. But
Hmm.
um, anyway, so that's this first chunk. But the big thing that's introduced during this portion is that there's another woman who shows up to see Amanda, and this woman is younger, and she kind of fights her because Maud at the door is like, oh, it's late. She's not expecting accepting visitors now. It's like, no, she's expecting me, and she comes in, and later that night or the next morning, Maud like sees her leaving and counting money, and it's like, okay, is this a prostitute or like what's going on here? And this woman keeps coming back, and Maud was very concerned, and even sort of witnesses them kind of like dancing and kissing together at one point, and is sort of watching. And I need to give the movie credit here because the direction and the performances of these scenes is so good, because it's so intriguing watching her react to these things and watching, like, you can just like see her head gears turning and her disapproval and needing to say and not discuss, because the question does come up from the characters a little bit later that like are you like homophobic, are you
Hmm.
this, are you that, or is this jealousy, are you falling in love with Amanda and you're jealous of this. Now unfortunately for the characters, they're not remotely right about that
Hmm.
either of these options, but it presents these questions, and I mean, well, what did you? I mean, this first half of the film, because this is the first half, right? The first half is their time together in the house, her
Mhm.
growing closer with her, ultimately trying to come between this relationship. If it is, I mean, because that first time made it look like she was a prostitute. It made it look like she got paid. Uh, but it also kind of feels like Amanda's really into her and kind of falling
Mhm.
for her. And Maud tells her to stay away. That this is a bad time for her, and she's taking advantage of her. And we get one of the most socially awkward, intense scenes where Amanda decides to throw a party for her
Mhm.
birthday, and then brings up that Maud did this behind her back in front of everyone, and sort of puts her in this really socially awkward situation. And I wouldn't say you feel bad for Maud because she did do all this. Like, she is guilty of everything she's been accused of here, but it's so socially awkward. It's so tense, and
Oh, especially when they start when they put the little kerchief on her head and the headband and
mm-hmm.
and it reminded me of the scene towards the end of the Elephant Man when the Elephant Man was at a party and they were like, you know, pretty much making a spectacle of him. It's like what they did with her. They made a spectacle of her.
Yeah, they're making fun of her for being too pure,
Mhm.
for being different, for being all these things, and I think one of the things in the movie that really comes up, and it's mainly through the Joy character who pops up again later, is the idea
Mhm.
that people around her maybe could have helped her if they'd noticed signs of her needing help early
Yeah.
enough. Right? The damage is too far gone now, right? She's too far gone at this point. And Joy's making an effort. She comes to see her later on. She wants to try and build a bridge and it
Mhm.
feels quite genuine, but obviously like it needed to happen before this incident. She was, it's just she implies that she was already got on a path before that point,
Mhm.
of loneliness, of sadness, of delusion, all these things.
Mhm.
Um, but when Amanda says something nasty to her at this party, Maud slaps her and causes a
Mhm.
bloody nose. And of course, typically speaking, if your live-in nurse assaults the patient, it
Yeah.
tends to lead to the dismissal of that live-in nurse. So this is where things really shake up, and she kind of sees this like again. Our narration becomes really important because our narration talks about how okay, I tried to do this, and I failed. I failed you, or you're not there for me to help me. So now I'm going to go and sin. I'm going to go, and she basically goes out almost like a predator, where she goes out in a nice top to a bar with the sole intention of possibly you know, meeting men and doing lustful things. Like that's basically what she's trying to do. And this was like really refreshing, not because of the context, the
Mhm.
content of the scenes, but more because she's been so reserved and timid and like so at least attempting to be pure the whole movie up until this point that her rebelling against her god is kind of a big deal. It's like such a
Mhm.
pivot for the character. Um, so this was really just fascinating stuff, and it kind of made it feel like okay, this movie's not lulling. It's starting to like refreshen itself now at this point
Mhm.
halfway through, and I think because do you think like if it had been them in the house the whole time, do you think the movie would have been able to keep your interest?
No, and you know this about me that I'm not a fan of bottle films.
Oh
So
yes, that's
so
right.
this I'm glad that it made a total shift at the point that it did. And also I was very surprised at what she did. Like when she first goes out to the bar and she's in the bathroom with that one gentleman, I was like, is she really? Okay. Oh, that's what she's doing. And then when she very awkwardly tries to interact with the people at the table next to her, that scene was so interesting because it's like she was trying to mimic human behavior in a way, even though she's human, but like there's something not quite right about her.
Yeah,
And then when
yeah, I was gonna say I don't think any scene in the movie exemplifies how she's probably felt her whole life, and her sitting
Mhm.
across from that table with like a group of like four friends who are laughing and joking, and her trying to join in with the laughter, and them just
Mhm.
being like, "Who is this crazy bitch trying to
Mhm.
like laugh with us? Go away."
And she bumps into the gentleman with I think he had a beard.
Yeah, the beard. Yeah,
And he was like, "Oh, you owe me a beer." And the next thing we know, she's riding him like like a pro. I'm like, wow, Maud, wow.
Well, there's an implication that she did have a history of this
Oh yeah.
before she became religious, because he says, "Oh, I think one of my friends hooked up with you back in the day."
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but there's, yeah, these sexual encounters, because there's two of them. Like you say, there's the one in the bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
which was obviously it's really depressing and kind of sad, and there's nothing like sexy about it. But there
Mm-hmm.
was a slight dark bit of humor to it, where she's just very robotically just jerking him off,
Mm-hmm.
and then is disappointed when he finishes. But it also didn't feel like it was going anywhere else.
Yeah.
It was just like it was like it was like the sexual equivalent of a polite handshake.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of handshaking, admittedly, but
Yeah.
yeah. And then the actual sex scene with the other guy, where yeah, she's riding like a pro, as you put it, but
Mm-hmm.
every time he tries to touch her with his hands, she's like slapping him away, like no, this is not personal. Like that,
Mm-hmm.
you're a tool to be used for the sin, and that's it. There's no connection. There's no intimacy here. There's no emotion. But this is when she has this like flashback to
Mm-hmm.
her incident, which is what made me think: was this sexual? Was the incident sexual with this corpse? Uh, what it actually does imply, though, is that she basically tried to administer CPR on someone who was dying
Mm-hmm.
and pushed too hard and went into the person's chest. And this kind of freaked her out. She was on her own, and she, arguably she maybe did like act, against her training or something. Like, maybe she did cross a line or do something unprofessional in her conduct. But like, yeah, again, like I was thinking she might have like done something necrophiliac,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think it is though. I don't think it is. I think I was just because of the connection with the sex scene,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when she has this flashback. Um, but everything about like this section is it's really well done, performed and directed, but it's so depressing. It's this
Mm-hmm.
sad, pathetic like existence where there's no real connections with anyone. She's been I can't even just say she's being used because she was using him too. I mean, it's a two-way street of just pathetic loneliness, but it's this sad thing where she is just completely and utterly alone, and she goes home stumbling because she's so drunk, and she kind of like over this next part of the movie apologizes to God, wants forgiveness, wants an even greater purpose, and kind of realizes that you know, yeah, that all these obstacles are just in the way of me achieving what you set me out to do, which was to save this woman's soul. And it's like, oh
Mm-hmm.
no, she's going to like start stalking her. She's going to like try and go after Amanda, and you really start to feel like, is she going to do something violent? Because it kind of feels like it might go that way. It's starting to feel that sense of the foreboding dread, and that's really cool. So, but she sort of does this penance thing to like to prove her
Mm-hmm.
devotion, which
It's like a self. Is it called self-flagellation when you like physically harm yourself
yeah,
while during prayer or something like that?
it's a very she puts nails or pins or whatever in the bottom of her shoes
Mm-hmm.
and then puts her
And
feet in.
she kneeled on popcorn kernels, which I know that's gotta hurt.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was eating popcorn actually when I was watching that. I'd finished it in the. This was like too far into the movie. I was long done, but it was just kind of funny to me that I was eating microwave popcorn, and then sure enough, she opens a bag of microwave popcorn and starts using that. There's not a lot of gross stuff in this movie, but there is a couple of moments where she's like scratching like a scab at one
Mm-hmm.
point. But yeah, the nails in the shoes, and then she actually goes for a walk outside like with these nails in her feet, and it's all very the idea of nails and flesh is very biblical,
Mm-hmm.
immediately, right? Uh, and there's even a scene as we're building up to kind of where this is going. She kind of stalks the new nurse a little bit, the woman who's now looking after Amanda, and even sits and talks to her, sort of casually, without revealing who she is. Just kind of
Mm-hmm.
having a chat about her. Um, and this woman is completely pleasant and seems like she takes her job seriously and likes being there for people who are dying.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but Maud gets offended at the idea that she's just accepting that she's going to die, and that's just that's life. She's there to make it
Mm-hmm.
comfortable and nice for them. But that's ultimately what it is. And Maud's like, no, I need to go save her soul. I need to go save her soul,
Hmm.
damn it. There's a scene where she talks to God, and this sounds like it could be silly, but it's not. It's actually it's done super well
It's
and
kind of creepy.
it's super. Well, this is the thing. I'm still thinking, is this really God? This sounds like a demon.
Yeah,
What's so funny is I didn't realize. I assumed this was Latin. It was actually Welsh,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
really funny. And what I also didn't know is that this actress was also voicing God
Hmm.
during this scene. This was her modulated voice speaking Welsh, talking back to her, which makes sense. And it's actually partly why I 100% on board of no, this is all in her head. This is all just her.
Hmm.
There is nothing supernatural going on here.
That's
Um,
also why I compared it to Lars von Trier. He did a movie many years ago, sometime in the 90s, that was called Breaking the Waves. And it was also about a woman who felt like she was talking to God,
hmm,
and it was her voice responding to herself as God. And it took place in a beachfront town, but it doesn't say specifically where in the UK it took place. But what's interesting is most of the actors, it's actually a Scandinavian film, but it doesn't take place in Scandinavia. It takes place in the UK. I don't know. Probably because it's Lars von Trier, and it was starring Stellan Skarsgård and uh, either Emily Watson or Emma Watson. I get them confused. One of the Watsons.
what what are the words? Yeah,
But similar premise of a very mousy, super religious woman who feels that she can talk to God and God is talking back to her.
yeah. I actually really like movies because I really liked a movie by Mickey Keaton a few years ago called Darling. I
Hmm.
really liked that movie.
Is that the one that was in black and white?
Yeah, black and white. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't remember her religion necessarily being as strong in that, but that was definitely a character where there was a slow build of like, okay, this
Hmm.
little timid woman is trying to like incorporate herself into society, and it feels like it's going to go bad. But you always have this feeling that she's the one who's going to do bad things. And
Hmm.
when it's done well, I really like that. The idea that the least suspecting person, the one who you'd think, oh, I could take them in a fight. I'm not. Why am I scared of this little person? Like that's, you know, she's like 5'1",
Hmm.
doesn't have any meat on her. Like almost anyone can knock her out. Why would you be scared, right? But the idea that they're the most dangerous person in the room and that they're going to do something really nasty is just
Hmm.
an interesting flip on things. Um, and yeah, so she has this scene where she talks to God and kind of like spurs her on to like the final part of the movie. And, there's a couple of scenes. I think it's I assume it's New Year's because there's fireworks outside where she actually floats.
Hmm.
Um, well, she's I think is this when she's drunk? I can't remember specifically. There's a lot going on here at this part of the movie. Uh, but she kind of floats, and again, it's like, is this in her head? Is this literally happening? All this kind of thing. I think this is actually right before she tries to repent because this is kind of her religious experience that kind of
Hmm.
brings her back into the fold and makes her want to like fulfill her purpose and worship God again. But this is kind of what spurs on her final thing, and she kind of stakes out the house. Um, but I think what's great about this conversation is just how it never feels silly. It always feels scary and intimidating, and it because I think you always have the idea, even if you're considering that this might all be real, you always have the possibility, I think, as a viewer, that this is just in her head. And I think in the context of that this is just in her head, her convincing herself that she needs to do this. And this is, where for me what the movie is really about. It's about this character who, because they're ostracized from society, because they never feel like they fit in, because they feel so lonely, that they find a purpose, because they want to feel important. They've never felt important in their life. So they come up with a purpose that makes them
Hmm.
feel special. And you can tie this to like more organized things where how people become indoctrinated into cults or terrorism or other things like that. But this is a more introverted take on it, where someone like you can see this being the story of someone who turns into a serial killer or a mass shooter or something like that. You could definitely see how this is like someone who connects to something in such an obsessive way and a delusional way that they become convinced of something. Like they give themselves a task that they can achieve that will make them feel like they have fulfilled their divine purpose, and it makes them feel like they are important, like they're the most important because they've got a mission from God. kind of. I didn't mean that to sound like Blues Brothers, but
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, we're on a mission from God.
but
That was a great movie.
but like that's kind of the to me what this movie ultimately is, and once that kind of clicked as we're going into kind of this third act of the film, like like I think what you want from any story as it goes into its third act is to love the direction it's taking because it feels like the
Hmm.
satisfying end point for where the movie's been building to. And sometimes I think horror more than any genre can sometimes falter there because it's very easy to just not. It's very easy to want to just shock the audience and just do scary things or whatever. But the fact that this is such a good character film where everything about the film is building up to who she is, why she is the way she is, what motivates her, and this delusion. And there's a scene kind of it's right before she's about to leave for the day to go and do, her final day of things. Because she even she gets like her bed sheet and puts it over her, like it's a
Hmm.
like a religious kind of garb, and she has a cross that she's wearing outside, so she looks like a saint. She's got it's the poster basically.
Hmm.
Um, and this Joy character comes over to see her and tries to just talk to her and say, hey, and even says the lines, I wanted to apologize, A, because how I reacted when I saw you the other night, but also because, we should have been there for you. You needed some help before that happened, and we should have been there. And is trying to reach out. And it's a case of, it's too late to have an effect, but that's a sad part of it is that usually it sometimes is too late when you actually notice that someone is this far gone,
Hmm.
and that maybe there is a sort of positive message in here of like paying attention to people who need help. And
And the scene was very tense because there were moments where I thought that Maud was going to hurt her.
oh yeah, I thought that too. Yeah, because Maud's dead silent for most of this scene.
Hmm.
She's just listening and not responding to anything she says.
And she picks up some chemicals and a lighter at one point, and I thought that she was going to like do something to her in that moment, but then she puts
Yeah,
them back down and walks over and just very gently touches her on the face and kisses her on the cheek and tells her thank you.
yeah, yeah. And it's a very sort of like religious goodbye kind of thing.
Hmm.
Like I mean, there's jokes to be made here about priests kissing people,
Hmm.
but like so, the innocent way of it, rather than
Yeah.
the more scandalous way that maybe has happened in history, recent history, probably all
Hmm.
history, but certainly that we know of recent history. So yeah, that scene is excellent. It's a very really really well done scene, and it's worth mentioning she has been shown throughout the movie to be flicking a lighter, and there's no context for it or for why she
Hmm.
has it because she doesn't smoke, she doesn't use it really, and it's not until the very final scene where it kind of becomes clear, like what that's been building up to. And you could probably, and if you're listening to the spoiler section, you've not seen the movie, you can probably guess given the hints we've given you at this point. But she sneaks in to the house, to Amanda's house, when the nurses left. This one doesn't live there, or maybe she's just leaving for a while to go do something. Who knows? But we heard that she's gotten worse since Maud left, and Maud comes up to see her, and Amanda actually sort of has this moment of reflection where she says, "Look, I'm sorry, I was mean to you. Um, you shouldn't have done what you did, but I was, I was especially awful. I was vindictive, and is trying to kind of make some amends because she knows she's dying
Hmm.
soon, and it's and I think it's an interesting contrast actually because you do hear a lot of stories of people who kind of like sort of turn to religion when they're dying, when they know
Hmm.
they're dying because they want some comfort, they want to know there's an afterlife, and it's interesting to compare Maud to a character like that who isn't believing that. Amanda never has, even though she sort of gives Maud the impression she is earlier on. She never actually does. She still says at this point, this isn't real. There is no
Hmm.
afterlife. There is no God. I am just, I'm dying. Um, and I think a lot of movies would present a character like that as the one who's wrong because they want to have this uplifting. But there's an interesting dynamic here where Maud's the one who is like become obsessed with this idea to give herself comfort and feel important, whereas the person who's dying has not. And while
Hmm.
she has been let's face it, a bit of a bitch throughout the film, she actually comes across here at the end as being more level-headed, as being more
Hmm.
at peace with what's about to happen, and like I think there's an interesting contrast there. And I don't think the movie's like being like super anti-religious necessarily. I don't think it's saying everyone who's religious is deluded, but it's definitely examining how someone can take a an organized belief like religion and really kind of manipulate it and be delusional with it to
Mm-hmm.
a dangerous level, right? I think it's definitely exploring that with this character, and it's interesting to give us this contrasting character who you might think would maybe turn to religion towards the end, but ultimately that's just not who she is, and she's never going to. And obviously, this has the big, you know, the dramatic ending where Maud is convinced she sees the devil
Mm-hmm.
in Amanda, and we know that. And at this point, I think most people, I think, would just agree this is in her head. Like this,
Oh yeah.
because she backs in fear, and then ultimately grabs this fancy pair of scissors and just stabs what she thinks is this evil being
Mm-hmm.
repeatedly. But when we cut to reality at the end of it, you know, it's Amanda's just lying there dead, having been stabbed repeatedly with these scissors, and it's like, oh shit, okay, obviously this is where we've really crossed the line.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
For a moment, just for a moment, when that first happened, I did think, oh wow, maybe Maud was right for that, because it was so startling to me. I didn't expect her to, change into this demonic entity. This also, through Maud's eyes, not in reality. But for a moment, I was like, oh my gosh, Maud is right. But then when you see the final ending, it's solidified that no, that was all in her head.
and there's a really sort of dark irony that she
Hmm.
believed she was going to save this woman's soul, and all she actually did was kill a dying woman before she died naturally. Like she,
Hmm.
like she just. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's more harsh. Arguably, it's less tragic than killing someone who's got a life to live, but than someone who's going to be dead soon anyway. And that's a really cold, logical way of looking at it. But there is kind of a really sad, like, this woman had maybe days, weeks, whatever left,
Hmm.
and you took that from her. It almost seems like more spiteful in a
Yeah.
weird way, and not that she made that choice from that perspective. She's deluded. She thinks she's stopping a demon or whatever. But it's a really stark moment, and I've said this before, and people are going to think I'm a psychopath, but there's something about rapid stabbing in a movie that I find very like satisfying
Hmm.
as a scene. It feels very visceral and very violent, and I think in this case it really, because even though we're seeing this demonic version of her, you know that this is really just her stabbing a sick old woman, and it's I mean she's not that old, but sick. She's really meek by this point in the movie, but she's just stabbing this woman, and it just comes off to, oh my god, she is absolutely a psychopath, and that's where
Hmm.
in my head I'm thinking of, like, this could be someone who turned into a mass shooter, this could be someone who turned into anything, and exploring the delusion of that person and like what brought them to that point is so well done. And like we said before, there's CG used here to alter Amanda to the
Hmm.
demonic version, but it doesn't go too far. It's
Yeah,
just enough.
I feel like subtle changes are creepier than
Yeah.
big changes. And the execution of the scene was really legitimately creepy.
And it's a movie that doesn't have a lot of creepy scenes, right? It has a lot
Hmm.
of brooding tone, which is arguably more effective and more important. But
Hmm.
because it only has a few really creepy sequences that does something truly horror esque, if you will, um, which is not to say that the rest of the movie is not a horror movie, because it absolutely is. But when it
Hmm.
does those super creepy horror moments, it's so effective because it's not been doing them every 2 minutes. It's held them, it's built to them, and because you have this real horror of this woman just turned into a murderer,
Hmm.
it feels way more. When you watch any other supernatural ghost movie, they may be fun, they may be really well executed, and all these things, but because this has this underlying thing of, this is actually just a woman going nuts and killing someone. She just
Hmm.
murdered someone, and that makes it feel have this like underlying darkness to it that just makes it feel sinister and sad and horrifying in a way that just a ghost killing someone, or just even just like a slasher villain killing someone doesn't have. Uh, because this is a character that we've been following who is now falling to this, and it's
Hmm.
sad. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. Uh, and then there's the ending, which is there's one final sequence. She walks out to the beach, holding a big bottle of acetone, and and it's a proper religious thing, I think, to like set yourself on fire. You know, that's a very
Mhm.
religious way of committing suicide. Uh, and
I think it's called self-immolation. Yeah, when you set
yeah,
yourself on fire. Yeah.
so she just starts pouring it over her head, and you hear like some people start to know because it's daytime at this point. There's people sort of
Mhm.
starting to notice, and you hear someone say, "Someone stop her!" Everyone's like too scared to go up to her because she's like covered in flammable liquid and is presumably about to set herself on fire, and she does. Now before she does this, there's a scene at her place where she looks in at the mirror and she's got like angel wings. It's like glowing angel wings.
Mhm.
And this is the sort of thing where if this was to be taken seriously, it might feel silly, but because this is in her head and she sees herself as having saved someone, she is now a saint. She's now
Mhm.
this savior figure. It plays really well because this is the magical thing she would think she'd see. It's this ridiculous visual. And when she burns herself, she smiles. And instead
Mhm.
of flames, you see glowing light and you see the angel wings again. And all the people on the beach are staring. They stop running and just get down on their knees as if they pray. And it's this biblical thing. And one of the other images throughout the movie that is constantly, it's constantly brought back to is at one point she sees it in the tea, which is the idea of a vortex appearing in the
Mhm.
tea. She sees it in a few other places in the film, just little hints, and she sees it in the sky appearing at one point. Here at the end, this vortex starts to appear over the water in the
Mhm.
ocean, and it's the idea that she's going to maybe fly up through the vortex, and this is her ascending. But right before the movie cuts to credits, it just cuts to the reality, just for like 1 second,
Yeah.
and it's just the reality of her screaming on fire
Mhm.
because that's what's really happening right now. Um,
That was jarring to me. That shook me up for a moment because I was not expecting that.
I think it was a perfect ending.
Yeah.
Like it was, I like because I'm thinking she's just on fire, and all of this is just what she's seeing.
Mhm.
And then you get that one moment of reality just to really let it sink in and just cut into you. And you're like, oh my god, this is such a tragic story of how someone needed help, didn't get it, became deluded because she needed to feel purpose, and
Mhm.
that purpose became tragic. And it just all of this was like I'm sure like an analysis from like a therapist would probably be a fascinating thing to read about this movie because it would probably get into this nitty gritty of like all these things that are going on. And the alternate take that some people have of this is actually that there is some reality going on here. It's that God is real,
Mhm.
but she's still deluded to the point where God didn't want her to kill someone. God didn't want her to do any of the stuff that she actually did. But God was real in the context of the story, and the ending isn't so much cut into reality; it's cut into her burning in hell because she murdered
Mhm.
someone. And I don't think I'm still firmly on this is just her burning in reality. This was all just
Mhm.
in her head, but it's a fun interpretation. Like I don't begrudge someone for having some fun with it and thinking about it in a different way. But yeah, yeah. Thoughts on the ending? Thoughts on this
I think that
character's journey?
I think the ending is what nails this movie. Like if it didn't have that impactful of an ending, I don't think I would have liked it as much. I like where this ending went,
Sure, yeah.
especially from the time period of her going to see Amanda, having the delusion of Amanda being possessed, to the walk on the beach and the self-immolation. It was just if the word that comes to my mind is beautiful, even though this is tragic and dark, but it's also beautiful.
Yeah, to her it's beautiful. Everything she sees
Hmm.
is is this
Yeah.
beautiful imagery, and it does look spectacular. And then you cut to that
Hmm.
that horrible reality, which is just there's just a woman on fire,
Hmm.
crying in pain. Um, it's like everything about it, like it feels like it's building to something dark. And to the
Hmm.
movie's credit, it does not feel like it disappoints, and it doesn't feel like it undercuts or it doesn't feel like it underdelivers on the darkness that it's sort of building to. It feels as horrific as it was building to the entire time,
Hmm.
and that feels it's weird to say satisfying. That makes it sound like we're sickos, but it is like
Yeah.
as a tragic ending. It's satisfying to what was being built throughout the whole film. Um, and I was expecting things from it. I'd heard some good buzz. The trailer was good. We said it was vague, but it was good. Had to give you a sense of
Hmm.
scale and tone, which is always what I like from a trailer for a movie like this. Um, but no, I came out of this feeling really, really
Hmm.
enthusiastic about it because it always just felt like it was every scene felt like it was telling me more about this character,
Hmm.
examining how she thinks, how she sees the world, how she sees the people around her, and this idea that she tries to rebel and is punished for it, and then we said the ending nails the movie. I wanted to make a joke about, well, no, the shoes nailed the movie.
Yeah. I just cannot not make puns. Oh, also, I mentioned to you earlier about watching this at 2 o'clock in the morning, which is the perfect time to watch this. And in the dark, in the quiet, cell phone turned over. Like, this is the type of movie you want to give it your full attention if you're watching it.
Absolutely, and it's perfectly paced as well. It's only like
Hmm.
85 minutes. It does
Hmm.
not waste a second. Everything is important. Everything is informing of the main character, and Amanda as well when she's relevant. But everything that Amanda is is there because it's relevant to her main character. This is a movie firmly about one character, and it's in her head. It's from her perspective, and it's an unreliable perspective. It's a perspective that is
Hmm.
skewed. Um, and as someone who's a bit of an introvert, I mean nothing like this obviously, but as someone who's a bit of an introvert, like there are those social moments where she's uncomfortable that there's a party being thrown, or she's uncomfortable that there's things going on that she doesn't want to be around, and there's those little things that do feel a little bit relatable, even if like so much of what she is extreme or is like off the deep end in all these different ways. There's these little human moments that do ground her in like a sense of reality where she feels like a real person, as much as what she believes is ridiculous, and she's having these nerdgasm. And that's actually nerdgasm. Sorry, I'm too used to
Hmm.
the phrase nerdgasm. Nerdgasm is something we all have from time to time. No,
Hmm.
but she's having these godgasms, and I think that's actually something that I didn't bring up in the sex scene, but I think it's interesting how robotic and unfulfilled and unsatisfied and just, I mean, not even just like she wasn't having an orgasm. She wasn't even stimulated. She was just riding like a robot, and like nothing was
Hmm.
happening. It was completely soulless. And then you compare that to earlier in the movie where she's like on the floor going, "Oh, oh
Hmm.
God, oh," like, you know, give me that big D, big G, or whatever someone says to God.
And with that, you'll never be able to run for public office. They'll find a video of you saying, "Give me that big D, big G."
Look, it's not often I get to crack a joke about
Hmm.
God screwing someone.
Hmm.
So when the opportunity comes knocking,
Hmm.
you take it. Look, it's a super serious movie and it's really well done.
Hmm.
So it's not maybe one that we crack as many jokes for, but there's got to be room for a little bit of humor,
Yeah.
okay?
Yes.
Right? This isn't Blind where I'm just making fun of everything that's in it because it's terrible. This is actually a really good, well done movie that should
Hmm.
be praised, that should be seen. I'd recommend it to people. Um, you know,
Oh, definitely. I actually wrote down movies out that I would recommend. If you like these movies, you probably like this one as well. I wrote down Possessor, His House, The Lodge, Goodnight Mommy. If you find yourself really enjoying those type of films, I think you would enjoy this one as well.
what's interesting is that's a mix of films here. I like Possessor a lot.
Hmm.
Uh, I think The Lodge I was disappointed in. I thought it got kind of murky in its storytelling the more it went on. And then Goodnight Mummy, I like more than The Lodge. I didn't love it, but I did like,
Hmm.
I liked it. But yeah, yeah, not a bad list. I would throw in Darling as a
Hmm.
as one because I brought that up earlier. It's something that kind of fits this mold a little bit, but no, really, really good. I yeah, it doesn't happen as much as we would like it to, obviously. But I think when you start a movie and you're kind of feeling it right away, like like the opening few scenes, Like it's just as she's leaving her little house, like it's this little one tiny apartment.
Mhm.
Um, and she walks out and she's got this big stairway. Even just the shots of her walking down those stairs just feel super like intentional and poignant, and just they feel kind of mundane. This world around her is grey, and it's just
Mhm.
kind of like sad and depressing and lonely. Everything about the movie, it's got that kind of it's a little bit warm, but it's not like super colorful or vibrant, and that's very intentional. And when she's in like the beachfront kind of, the arcades and the around the bright lights of all the beachfront sort of like lively, you know, like scenery. Um, she feels so out of place because her world is so quiet and
Mhm.
sad, and like this is almost like an ironic image, her standing next to all these bright lights because it's loud and colorful and vibrant and everything she isn't. And
Mhm.
I think
I like that it
yeah.
gave a feel for the area. I love when
Mm,
movies make you feel like you've been to a place from her apartment building to Amanda's house to the boardwalk and the restaurant or pub maybe that she was in. You got a feel for this area that she was in.
absolutely. Yeah. You really get a sense of the setting.
Mhm.
Um the way it's directed and the visual is just doing nothing but kind of give the movie the feel that it wants to have. And but like I said, it's so rewarding when you're feeling a movie in the first like 10 minutes. And so many movies, especially in horror, kind of fall apart or maybe lose
Mhm.
steam, or like there's definitely a lot of movies, horror movies, where I'll watch them and go, you know what, as a 20-minute short that might have been amazing, but they didn't know how to make it a 90-minute movie or
Mhm.
something. But
That's what I
this,
felt about Color Out of Space. Like they I mean, this is mostly going back to the location.
sure,
I never got a feel for that farm. It just felt like scenes and made in different sets, but it never felt like a farm or a town, or they just didn't give you a feel for that place.
yeah, I like Color Out of Space. I kind of agree with that statement though. I like some of the. I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, admittedly, but I did
Mhm.
like, Nick Cage is fun and the
Yeah.
practical effects are good.
Oh, yeah.
I thought all four of the family characters were well done and likable
Mhm.
and whatnot. Um, but this movie, it's paced so well. Everything feels important, and it builds to a climax that never feels like it. It's underwhelming from where it began. Everything
Mhm.
clicks.
It's earned. The climax is very much earned.
Yes. And unlike the main character, it does have a climax. Sorry, it was a cheap joke. And that's actually not even that true. She didn't have a climax in the sex scene. She had many a climax while
Yeah,
she was praying.
she did have a god she had 2 godgasms that I can recall.
I mean, hell, if praying did that for me, I'd be doing it. I'd be like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, sure, I'll pray to the Almighty every night. But alas, uh, so yeah, and obviously that introduces the idea that there's something sexual about this, and then you actually get to the sexual stuff, which doesn't do anything for her, and it just shows you how disconnected from everything she really is, and yeah. So what wonderful character study of a film, wonderful
Mhm.
tragedy that builds at a perfect pace. I really can't say enough nice things. This is
Mhm. And a
dear.
great first movie.
Oh yeah,
Amazing first movie.
yeah. For a feature debut, this is wonderful stuff. The director here, Rose Glass. I was going to say Miss Rose. I knew one
Mhm.
was Rose. Rose Glass is now on my radar. Going
Mhm.
forward, I will see works that she has done going forward without question, because this was wonderful. So, and if anything, I think I like it even more after talking about it and thinking about it and
Mhm.
going further into it. Uh, which I guess leads us to the ultimate question: is Shasha, what are you going to rate Saint Maud out of 10?
I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I think I'm going to just slightly up a little bit and go 8.5. I'm going to
Mhm.
go 8.5. Is a great film, and I would recommend it uh, happily. So, and I think safely probably the best movie we've done on Sacred Hockey Mask thus far.
Yeah, I would say yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely the highest one I've can recall rating on the Sacred Hockey Mass.
So that'll be cool. And when we get to the end of the year, and if we're doing like top tens, well, this isn't from this year, I suppose, so this wouldn't count. Damn it.
Mhm.
Damn it. That was a flaw in my plan. Oh well. But that's our thoughts on Saint Maud. It's a very good film. Gets a seal of approval. Gets 8.5 machetes out of 10. Okay, so that is Saint Maud. You can let us know what you think of Saint Maud in the comments below. So please do like and subscribe and ding the bell as well. All those things help out YouTube channels a lot. So it would help out if you do. Just hit those buttons and maybe leave a comment if you feel so inclined. You can of course go over to Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, and support us financially for as little as $1 per month, and that $1 will get you a bonus episode every month. And of course, the higher tiers have things like voting for an episode every month and other goodies as well. So go and have a look and see if you're interested. I'll also take this time to thank our Patreon producers, which is one of the higher tiers, of course. But thank you to Tyler Hess, De Palacios, David Short, Board Now, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, David Brown, and Stanley. They're our producers for the month. So thank you very much to them. Get us on the Twitters at Screams Midnight. That's the Mailed Fuzz Movies Twitter. It used to be the Streams After Midnight Twitter, hence the name, but now it incorporates that, but also Sacred Hockey Mask and the Atomic Cinema Experiment. So, and also check out those shows too. Why not? Streams After Midnight's more horror, and the Ace, the Atomic Cinema Experiment, is science fiction movies, and I would do that with Tara. So, go and have a look at that stuff. Shasha, pimp your channel.
What we just have coming up is more Coast to Coast Horror with Crystal and Shasha. And we just posted 2 episodes about our adventures in Florida. One where we went to the spiritualist community called Casadega and visited a fairy trail, an enchanted fairy trail. And we also went to Orlando Ghost Adventures, where we actually got to use some ghost hunting equipment and encountered some spirits in downtown Orlando.
Cool. There you go. I also noticed you referred to yourself in the third person at one point in that.
Oh, I didn't mean to. I was just calling the title of the show. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to come off as a sociopath. I always look at people funny when they refer to themselves as the third person. Like, you know, you're talking about yourself.
That's fine. I'm okay with everyone thinking you're a sociopath. That can be your gimmick. Could be a gimmick. All right, that is the show. That is Sacred Hockey Mask.
Mhm.
So thank you very much for joining us once again. I think that's maybe episode 9.
Oh wow, that went by
I
fast.
know. So yeah, big episode 10 coming next week. Will the movie live up to this one? A tall order. Tall order. This was a
Mm.
very highly rated movie. So
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see how it does. But you'll find out next time. But yeah, that is us. So once again, thank you very much for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies. And remember that if you see someone wearing the sacred mask, repeat to yourself, hockey season ended months ago.